There's this major shift happening in the business world right now. Something that used to be kinda on the sidelines is now front and center in company strategy. And that thing is carbon accounting.
So, I've got to ask, is your business ready for what's coming? For this new climate economy? Because honestly, this isn't something we can ignore. It's happening, whether we're on board or not.
Yeah, this isn't a nice to have anymore. It's becoming a core part of how businesses operate. I mean, think about it. You've got new regulations popping up, investors asking tough questions, and even your customers are paying attention. If you want to stay competitive, you've got to be tracking your emissions.
Okay, so what is it exactly? Well, the best way to wrap your head around it is to think of it just like financial accounting. Seriously, it's the same exact process, measuring, tracking, reporting, but instead of counting dollars and cents, you're counting your company's greenhouse gas emissions.
All right, so how do you actually do this? The very first step is figuring out where all your emissions are coming from. And the whole thing is neatly broken down into 3 main categories. We call them scopes.
First up, we have Scope 1. These are the emissions your company makes directly. Super simple. We're talking about things you own or control, like the gas your company cars burn, or the emissions coming straight from the boiler in your factory. Okay, next is Scope 2. Now, these are still your emissions, but they're indirect. They come from the energy you buy. So think about the electricity you use to power your office, or the heat and steam you purchase. The actual pollution happens over at the power plant, but since you're the one using the energy, it's on your tab.
And that brings us to the big one, Scope 3. Honestly, for most companies, this is the largest and trickiest part of the whole puzzle. Scope 3 covers basically everything else. All the other indirect emissions in your entire value chain, from the carbon footprint of your suppliers all the way to what happens when your customers actually use your product.
So right about now, you might be thinking, okay, I get it. I'll just throw this all into a spreadsheet. And I've got to stop you right there. Trying to do this manually is a total nightmare. It's incredibly slow, it's super easy to make mistakes, and let's be real, it just doesn't scale. As your business grows, that spreadsheet is going to break.
So we need a way to get from all that complexity to some real clarity. The good news is there's a much better way to handle all this, a modern approach that makes it all manageable.
It really boils down to a pretty straightforward 3-step process. First, you just collect the data, things like your power bills or invoices from suppliers. Step 2 is where the magic happens. You calculate the emissions. This means converting all that data into something called CO₂ equivalent, which is just a standard way to measure all the different greenhouse gases on the same scale. And finally, Step 3. You analyze that information to get some amazing insights.
And here's the best part. You are not expected to do all of this by hand. There are modern software platforms out there built to automate this entire process. They handle the hard parts, make sure it's accurate, and save you a ton of time. A modern dashboard gives you this really clean, simple overview. Suddenly, you've got a clear picture of your entire carbon footprint, all your emissions data, all broken down by scope, all visible in one place. It's a completely different world from that messy spreadsheet we talked about, right?
And a good platform just makes everything easier. You don't need to be a sustainability expert. It can automatically pull in that really tricky Scope 3 data for you. And when it's time to show your numbers, it spits out audit-ready reports that you can hand right over to investors or use for certifications.
But here's the real key, the most important takeaway. This isn't just about ticking a box for compliance. This is about turning all that climate data into actual business intelligence. We're talking about spotting where your biggest emissions, your hotspots are, finding new ways to save money, and getting ahead of climate-related risks. It's a strategic tool. So, let's end where we began. With tools now making this easier and more accessible than ever before, the question really is, are you ready to take control? Are you ready to stop just measuring and start actively managing your climate impact as a fundamental part of how you do business?